Hello and welcome back to the VolReport Show. I'm Ryan Sylvia, joined by Noah Taylor, and we are with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network. And Tennessee's coming off a 71-0 win over Kent State, and now turning the page to a big Oklahoma game this weekend. Noah, let's start with Kent State. It's been a couple days. What are your thoughts? I don't know if much has changed. I think that we've kind of talked about it a lot at this point, but what a dominant showing it was from the Vols.
Yeah, it was impressive. I know you look at these first three games, what Tennessee's been able to do, and maybe you put an asterisk next to Chattanooga and Kent State, who's probably worse than Chattanooga. But I mean, regardless of the opponent, I think what Tennessee's been able to do, we thought again coming into the year that this offense would improve under Nico. We thought that the run game, at least the top half of it with Dylan Sampson now taking the bulk of the carry, taking all of the first team reps there would be fun. There wouldn't be a drop off there. They've proven that much and more. And this wide receiving core has been impressive in what they've been able to do. And again, two out of the three games, a lot of those guys didn't even play the second half. So an impressive showing from them, obviously a historic one with the numbers they were able to put up. But I think right now you couldn't ask for you couldn't have scripted a better start for this Tennessee offense. And that Kent State game was just dominant in every facet. And if there was any takeaway from it, it's the fact that in the second half, you had a lot of younger guys out there. I know the coaches have talked a lot about having the luxury of being able to do that this year. And those guys didn't miss a beat either. Preserved the shutout. They did against Chattanooga as well. So I think that was a really good start and a really good way to play or to go into SEC play.
Yeah, it's like, is Kent State bad? Yeah, they're horrible, but you couldn't really do much better considering the time frame. Like, you score 37 points in the first quarter. I don't care who you're playing. That's impressive. I mean, that is an FBS football team. I know you said they're probably worse than a lot of FCS teams, but still, you went into a college football game, a Division I college football game, put up 37 points in the first quarter and 65 in the first half. That's really impressive. I don't care who it's against. So, yeah, well, it'll be the best test this weekend against Oklahoma that they've had. Not that NC State's a bad team. I still think NC State's a decent team, and that was when they had a Grayson McCall that was healthy too. And Tennessee rolled in that game as well. So there's a lot of confidence around this team. You can kind of feel it just kind of in the city of Knoxville. A lot of people are confident about what Tennessee is this year and what they could do this weekend. Let's recap the higher lower challenges we've been doing, though. You have a 1-0 lead on the season after you beat me pretty bad against NC State. So let's see what we had for that Kent State game. See if I can tie it up or you can strengthen the lead. The over-under for points for just Tennessee, I had at 59.5. Well, they got it in the first half, as we just said. We both took the over on that, though. So we'll get a point each. Dylan Sampson, 99.5 rushing yards. We both said yes. And Dylan Sampson finishes with 101, so barely. But he gets over the mark, so we're both 2 for 2 there. Imaliava, 2 quarters of play. We both said, or really play past halftime was the question. We both said no, so we're both correct on that one, 3 for 3. 4.5 penalties. This is the only one that we differed on. I said they'd have more than UT would have more than 4.5 penalties. You said no. In Tennessee, I'll double check. I believe they were whistled 5 times. Yep, 5 penalties for 54 yards. So I'm gonna win this week just off of that penalties question. We both also had over on Merklinger, 4.5 pass attempts, and he threw the ball 5 times. So I go 5 for 5. You go 4 for 5. We're even to back up heading into this Oklahoma episode. Let us know how you did in the comments below if you played along last week, and make sure you play along this week and leave a comment. Once we get to the end of this episode, we'll do the higher or lower challenge for this Oklahoma game. And yeah, just let us know your responses. Let us know the next week how you did. It's been fun to kind of do this every week. So Oklahoma, though, how do you feel like this game's going to go? The line opened a while ago with Tennessee as the underdog, and now all of a sudden they're the big favorite. Do you think that's correct?
I do think that. I think, we talked a little bit about it today after the press conference. You're just getting such a confident vibe from these players and these coaches, and not just what the veterans are able to do, but the confidence in Nico going on the road. I know he said back in fall camp he prefers road games. He hasn't had a chance to really play in one yet as Tennessee's quarterback, certainly not as the starter, and certainly not in the SEC. So I like where Tennessee's at right now. I like the way that they're playing. I know we've talked about Oklahoma's offensive front being banged up a little bit. I feel like obviously it's a team that so far through 3 games has had to really lean in on its defense, which might help them a little bit at home. I certainly think it'll be a closer game than NC State was, and definitely obviously more than Chattanooga and Kent State, definitely more of a challenge there. But I think that Tennessee's built for a game like this. I think that they have the veteran leadership where it counts the most, and that's in the trenches. They have the depth. They have a confident quarterback who's young, hadn't played a lot of football, but I think that whole spiel they've given us all week about his laid-back personality, I mean, I think that'll be key. You go back to NC State as an example of this. Again, not a true road game, but a split, game right there in NC State's backyard. And he throws a pick early in that game that could have been disastrous for Tennessee, could have led to a touchdown. It doesn't, obviously. And then they come back out there with Nico again, and they stay aggressive, and they get the big pickup with the throw to Squirrel White. So I think that kind of gives us a little bit of a snapshot of what he's able to do if he runs in anything like that this weekend. But, again, I think it's just the veteran leadership that Tennessee has. I think they're equipped to win on the road, and if they face some adversity early, they're able to overcome that.
The closer and closer that we get to kickoff, the more I think Tennessee's going to handle this game. And I think that it'll probably be close in the first half, but I think Tennessee gets off to a nice start, and I don't think they really ever surrender the lead. I don't know, just the more that I watch Oklahoma from their first 3 games against teams that, let me say, you should beat the crap out of Tulane. Like, Tulane's not a bad program, but 3 games that Temple, Houston, Tulane, that you probably, if you want to consider yourself like a top 10 playoff contending team, you want to be able to handle those 3 games without much of a sweat. And really, they weren't able to do that in the latter 2. And when you watch that, and then you watch what Tennessee did, and once again, granted, 2 of those games are against really bad teams compared to Tennessee, and one of them is against an NC State team that's kind of off to a difficult start. But when you compare that, and then you compare it to Oklahoma against some teams that honestly aren't too different from each other, it's really favoring Tennessee. And I think the offensive line situation that Oklahoma has, where we'll see we'll get the injury report on Wednesday and throughout the week, and we'll see exactly the availability of some of those guys, but they're banged up and they haven't looked good with the backups, and it maybe wasn't the best line in the country in the first place. And then you look at the defensive side that's been really good, but are they going to be able to stop a Dylan Sampson pass or rushing game? And then Nico through the air with some weapons that they feel really comfortable with this year. I'm not sure. I think Tennessee puts up enough points that Oklahoma can't really compete, and I think the Tennessee defense takes over and makes things comfortable down the stretch. But that's where I'm at here on a Tuesday afternoon. So we'll see. We got plenty of time till kickoff. Let's talk about the defensive side, though. Is this the game that Tennessee gives up a touchdown?
I think it is. I think obviously it's been impressive what they've been able to do. I think this is that game, and I think that because obviously it's on the road. I think that'll play maybe in Oklahoma's favor. Like you said early, I think that it'll be a little bit of a challenge in the first half, but a game Tennessee clamps down on, and I know we'll give our score predictions here later in the week on VolReport.com, but. I think this is the game where you'll see a touchdown, and it's going to happen eventually against them.
Well, it could be one of those General Neyland teams. You never know.
That is true, and so far they've played like that. They've been as dominating as you could ask for. So, it's one of those things that you feel like it. Because of Oklahoma playing on the road, because it's the first SEC game and it's an SEC team, that this will be the game, but. Yeah, I mean, with the way that they've played right now, it has seemed like nobody's going to be able to get that touchdown on them. But I'll say that Oklahoma will get one in there on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll find a way to punch one in. But it does feel like it's really fun to watch Tennessee's defense right now, and that wasn't the case 2-3 years ago. Like when Heupel first took over, it didn't matter who Tennessee was playing. It felt painful at times to watch this defense because the offense flies down the field so fast and scores, and then you're turning around and watching the defense, and it's. All right, well, sure, maybe they get a nice play on first down, but then it's a first down, second down. Okay, maybe they get to that 3rd and 15, like you have to be on and all of a sudden there's a play that moves the chains. Like it kind of hurt to watch at times, just as a football fan, just like can this defense get off the field? And now through the first 3 games, it's almost more fun watching this defense than it is watching the offense.
Yeah.
And that's saying something when you have a Heisman contender, Nico Imiliava at quarterback. You have a running back like Dylan Sampson, who could play his way into a really high draft pick. You have dynamic receivers, a really good offensive line, 3 tight ends that this coaching staff really trusts. But at the same time, I'm sitting there almost more excited to see, okay, well, James Pierce, he doesn't have a sack yet, but he's killing it every play, and he's just murdering some tackles and getting to the quarterback and forcing that ball out or making quick decisions. The offensive or the defensive tackles are just clogging the complete middle of the run game and not even letting running backs pass the line of scrimmage. Like, it's just been really fun to watch, especially the pass rush. But even when you go back to Keenan Peely, who's just been a monster. Like, one-on-one situations in space, Keenan Peely's bringing the ball carrier down every time. And the secondary's played pretty well. Really the only time, the only drive so far this season that the defense was like, was the first one against NC State when they converted maybe three third downs to open that game. And then I don't think they converted a third down the rest of the ball game. So it's been really fun to watch. I'm sure Oklahoma scores a touchdown, but I think the defense has a really nice game this Saturday still, even though if they give up 7 or 14. Offensive side, Nico, what does he need to do for Tennessee to win on Saturday?
Well, I think the biggest thing is take care of the ball. It's an Oklahoma team that, you look at the 10 turnovers in 3 games, pretty impressive. Now, most of those have come on, I think, stripping the ball, fumble recoveries, things like that. But they've got 4 interceptions. And obviously Nico had the 2 against NC State. Could have easily had one early against Kent State on Saturday. I think that's the most important thing, is just taking care of the ball and not giving Oklahoma any kind of momentum that really wouldn't be there otherwise. Make them kind of create that momentum themselves and not kind of hand it to them. I think will be the biggest key. But I think what he's been able to do, you go back to that NC State game, it wasn't great, but it was good enough, certainly to score 51 points. Obviously one of those was a defensive touchdown, but I think if you get that kind of performance out of him again, minus the 2 interceptions, which could be backbreaking in a road game, I think that kind of performance would be good enough. Certainly you'd like to see even better than that. But one question Josh Heupel was asked, I think yesterday, that I thought was actually pretty interesting, was about the amount of guys that haven't played a full game yet, a full 60 minutes, because they've been sitting out. How, is that, a negative? Is that a positive? And, he talked about practice being a thing that, prepares them for playing for full 60 minutes. You'd imagine this would be that game, possibly that Nico's out there for the full game and things like that. If you're a Tennessee fan, certainly you hope not, but it may be that kind of game. So I'm kind of interested to see that as well. If it is getting kind of close into the third quarter or whatever, how's he able to handle that in a road environment? But I'd say taking care of the ball is the biggest thing and just being efficient.
Yeah, I mean, Nico's barely played past the second half this year. And if you average out the 3 games, I think the average is probably about exactly halftime when you consider that. I mean, it's absurd that Tennessee had such a lead against Kent State that the starters didn't even make it till halftime. I think Nico after the game was like, I've been in blowouts, but I don't know if I've been in one where I didn't play all the way up till halftime. And then against NC State, he's barely in the game past the third quarter. So I think if you average them out, the starters probably played about a half of football this year, and then they're done with their games. So it'll be interesting. You have to assume this will be a game that the starters will play 60 minutes, or at least pretty close to it, if Tennessee can make this thing kind of lopsided at some point. But you expect it to be a 60-minute game, and how are they going to respond to that? I do think that's something that's worth looking out for. I want to talk about the receivers, though. Who's a receiver in this game that you have your eye on? Like, who's a receiver that at the end of the game you're going, okay, either maybe they continue to have a really strong season like a Dante Thornton, or maybe, okay, that was the Chris Brazzell breakout game, or, okay, well, that's the Squirrel White we've been waiting to, like, which receiver at the end of this game are we going to be looking at and talking about having a great game?
Yeah, there's so many to choose from. And the first one that comes to mind for me is Brew. Again, another one of those guys that you expect a lot of big things out of. We hadn't had a chance to see too much of that just because of the lopsided scores they've had. I'm interested to see how he does on the road in a big game. His first true big game since that South Carolina game he was injured in last year. That'll be interesting to see. But I'm going to go with Squirrel because it's kind of been a little bit of, I hate to say, slow start for him. Just because, again, Tennessee's been able to put so many points up. But you've had the Dante Thornton game against Chattanooga. You had you didn't get many opportunities against NC State because of what their defense was doing. But then last week, Chris Brazzell had that huge catch on the throw from Nico. I'm looking for Squirrel to kind of have that kind of game, and I think it'll be this week. Obviously, he's been getting some targets, but I think that this could be a good opportunity for him to get some targets and do some stuff with the ball.
I'll give you – I just looked up the stats. Here's a little quick trivia question. How many receptions do you think Squirrel White has this season through 3 games?
Jeez. I'm going to say 3.
5, which feels
it's more
really low, though, still for Squirrel White, who's expected to have such a big season. I mean, he's still got 108 yards, which is tied with Brew McCoy for 3rd place. It's 21.6 yards per reception along a 45, which was probably that one against NC State.
Probably.
So it's not, and it's not like, oh, he's off to a bad start. I mean, he's barely playing in these football games.
Yeah, right.
The 12 personnel that even they used against NC State, he's not getting as much snaps as he normally would. But it does feel like, okay, well, Squirrel White, we know what he's capable of. We've seen what he's capable of. He's still a guy that hasn't found the end zone. Bray McCoy is still a guy that hasn't found the end zone. Could these be the games that they kind of have that breakout? I'll actually look at these stats really fast. Dante Thornton's Tennessee's leading receiver at the moment. Also just 5 receptions, which most of them came in that first game against Chattanooga. He's got 169 yards. That's an average of 33.8 yards per catch, which is just insane. He's got the 2 touchdowns. Chris Brazzell, 140 yards. He's got the most receptions on the team right now, which I don't know if I would have guessed that. I think I probably would have guessed Brew if I kind of blind guessed on this. But he's got 140 yards on 10 catches, had that big 53-yard touchdown against Kent State, which kind of makes up for a lot of those yards. And then Brew and Squirrel tied at 108. Behind them, it's Dylan Sampson at 70 or 7 receptions. Then you have the tight end duo of Miles Kitzelman and Holden Stays at 54 and 47 yards. Then you get to some more receivers. Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, that kind of redshirt sophomore duo. And then you have Mike Matthews through 1 game, 2 catches, 35 yards and a touchdown. Ethan Davis, 4 catches, 34 yards and a touchdown. And then a bunch of guys that probably won't play much in big games. And then some running backs mixed in there as well. But I said that it's to kind of recap, it's been kind of by committee. There's guys that have big games here and there, but someone's going to have to step up against Oklahoma, and I'm interested to see who it will be. I'll put my money on Dante Thornton keeps this thing rolling. I think he has a big catch, big play, maybe finds the end zone after taking the top off the defense. I think Dante Thornton will lead the team in receiving yards at the end of this. Really quick, I just wanted to touch on this. It was kind of on my mind earlier before we get into the over-under segment. Max Gilbert, Tennessee's kicker, how confident are you in him right now? If Tennessee lines up, let's not even say it's a crazy long field goal, but let's say that ball is placed on the hash. It's a 38-yard field goal on the road at Oklahoma. You're down 2. You line up Max Gilbert to kick it with 1 second left. What's your confidence level right now that Max Gilbert makes that kick?
Man, that's a great question because obviously we haven't had to put him in a high pressure situation yet like that. And, I feel pretty good about his chances in that. I think he's off to a really, really good start for Tennessee. Obviously won that competition that coaches said was close up until the end of fall camp. And, then came out in that Chattanooga game and I think hit 2 or 3 in that one. And he's been consistent. I think you got to feel really good about where he's at. And if he's able to do that, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're hoping it doesn't come to a situation where on the road he's putting where he has to make that for the win or to tie the game or whatever. But it may be good for him. I think if you are Tennessee to that point, it may be good to get, obviously you want every possession to end in a touchdown, every scoring possession anyway. But it may be good to get him, in that kind of situation this weekend because I'm sure it'll come at some point this season. But with the start that he's had, he had that one miss. I believe it was against NC State late, and it was 51 yards or so. And that was obviously not a lot of pressure there because the game was out of reach. But I would feel pretty good about him. He's been pretty consistent for Tennessee so far as a first-time starter, and I think that bodes well for them. But it would definitely be interesting to see in that environment.
Max Gilbert, 22 for 22 on extra points, which kind of a stat that gets overlooked sometimes. You got to make your extra points, and he's perfect on those so far with plenty of sample size through 3 games. 7 for 8 on field goals. He is 1 for 1 inside 30, 5 for 5 inside 40. and 7 for 7 inside 50. Like you said, just has one miss on that 50-plus yarder against NC State. 43 points responsible off the leg of Max Gilbert so far this season. But yeah, I don't know if we can really even answer that question. It was kind of an unfair question for me to ask because we haven't seen too much of him, and maybe you get part of a bad taste in your mouth from the late miss against NC State, but it was deep, and sometimes kickers are going to miss. He's young. I believe he's still a redshirt freshman, so he'll have plenty of opportunities. I feel good about where he's at right now, though, and I think Tennessee has a lot of trust in him, and he won the kicking job over 2 other guys. So clearly they feel like he's got the capability to make some big kicks if needed. Let's do this over and under real quick. Tell me over under the stat, and then quickly a response afterwards, a quick one on why you choose it. The first one, Dylan Sampson is going to keep the 100-yard streak alive. The line set at 99.5 rushing yards.
Man, I'm going to go under this week, just in part because like the scoreless or keeping teams out of the end zone, it's just so hard to do that game in and game out, and certainly against a defense that's played well, an Oklahoma defense that's played well. I'm going to go under for those reasons, but it's still obviously I think we'd both agree he'll certainly affect the game in a big way.
I'll take him to go over. I think that he's going to play a lot of football, and I think that will result in him getting over that 100-yard mark just by sheer amount of carries. The next one, so you had no, I had yes, or you had under, I had higher. The next one, team rushing yards. Are they going to hit 200?
Man. Now I've tried. This is always the weekly struggle of trying not to contradict myself. Yeah, I mean, I'll say they'll hit that mark. It's going to be obviously hard to do if I don't think Dylan Sampson get over 100, but I think they hit that mark. I don't know if you're factoring in what Nico's able to do as well in the run game or just among running backs, but yeah, I think, and I also think obviously the way that they use Dylan Sampson in different ways, obviously he can be a threat catching the ball too out of the backfield. And this could be a game where you see that as well to kind of maybe take away some yards that he may get otherwise. But I'll say they'll hit that 200 mark altogether. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do that if Dylan Sampson isn't rushing for 100 or more.
Yeah, maybe a Deshaun Bishop breakout game.
It would have to be.
I'll take yes as well, then, because I think Nico gets a good chunk of change with his legs and kind of pushes that mark forward. Just keep it with Nico. 249.5 passing yards is the line for Nico Iamaleava against Oklahoma.
I'm going to go under on that one. I think it'll be a big game from him. I think, but again, I think part of it will be his legs. I think he'll hit on some big, deep passes, and then, then you'll see some short stuff. Obviously, we talked about Brew having a game, a breakout game for him. Potentially, I think you maybe see some of that shorter stuff like they did against Chattanooga when, of course, Chattanooga was giving them a ton of space, but obviously he was able to be effective with that. So maybe you see things like that where he's catching the ball and turning it upfield. But I'll go with the under. But again, he's playing, the one reason the numbers have been so low is he hadn't played past halftime. So, maybe he does get that mark if he's playing four quarters. But I'll go with the under.
I'll go under. I think he gets over 200. I think it goes shy of 250. I think he has a really efficient game. I think that his completion percentage is high. I think he takes good care of the football. I think he finds the end zone, but I think the total number of yards probably land a little shy of 250, and Tennessee more looks at that run game with Dylan Sampson as kind of the main workload for the offense. Defense, 20.5 allowed points is the line. And now, like Nico throws a pick six, that counts. We're counting what the scoreboard shows.
I just don't see a team putting that many points up on Tennessee, at least not this Oklahoma offense. I'm going to go under on that. Again, like we said, I think you do see maybe a little bit of a close game early because of the momentum, the road environment, all that. But I'm going to go under that. I just don't see a team being able to put more than 20 points on this Tennessee defense right now. And I know they'll face better offenses down the road, but I just think this week you see that continued dominance. Maybe not to the extent that we saw the previous 3 weeks, but certainly going to be tough for Oklahoma to put that many points on it and score multiple touchdowns.
Yeah, I'll take no as well. I think that Jackson Arnold's going to be under duress for a lot of this game with Tennessee's defensive line. I think they're going to make life really tough on him, and that this Oklahoma offense won't have enough in the tank to get over 20 points. Leading receiver for Tennessee, doesn't matter who it is. We talked about kind of our predictions, but will the leading receiver for Tennessee hit the 100-yard mark? 99.5 is the line.
Yeah, man. I'm going to go just under that. I'll say the leading receiver will get under that. But I mean, it's certainly one of those situations where you've seen it the last couple of weeks. Dante, obviously week 1, Chris Brazel last week, even Squirrel against NC State. Those 1 or 2 just deep balls that Nico's been able to hit on will certainly, pad some stats a little bit. But I think it'll be under for the receiver, for the leading receiver.
I'll go over. Like I said, I think it'll be Dante Thornton. I think he'll continue his nice season. I'll go over. I don't think it'll be crazy over that mark. But I think, if Dante Thornton catches a 70-yard touchdown, then you're only 30 away from it. So I think it'll be one of those situations where a lot of them probably come from a splash play. But I do think that at least one receiver will hit that 100-yard mark. So we had 2 different ones this week, 3 of them the same. So it'll come down to Dylan Sampson's rushing yards and Tennessee's leading receiver to see who can take the advantage, or if we stay tied up now that we're 1-1 through 3 weeks in the over-under challenge. Once again, let us know your 5 responses down below. If you played last week, let us know how you did. And go head over to VolReport.com if you want to be informed on everything Tennessee athletics, especially as we count down to kickoff. We'll be in Norman, Oklahoma, so make sure you follow along with our coverage here at the YouTube channel, but also at VolReport.com and on Twitter at Tennessee Rivals to stay fully up to date on what Tennessee football is doing. Links to everything news in the description. Thank you for watching.